Once upon a time, there was a little elephant who lived happily with his herd in the Edo Wildlife Sanctuary in the heart of South Africa. The day had started like many others for the young elephant. The scorching sun was high in the sky, and the group moved slowly, searching for food among the vegetation. Every now and then, the big adult elephants would stop to pull twigs from the plants or pick up fallen fruits, while the young calf curiously wandered between the legs of his elder companions. The calf eagerly awaited the moment when the herd would stop at one of the natural waterholes spread across the reserve. It was always the most exciting time of the day for him. He couldn't wait to immerse himself in the cool water, splash around and spray himself with his trunk, driving away the oppressive heat that had been with him since the early morning hours. When the herd finally stopped at a large pool, the calf was the first to dive in, full of enthusiasm. He slid into the water, diving and resurfacing, waving his trunk with joy. But that day something went wrong. While playing carefree, the young elephant lost his balance on a slippery bank and ended up sinking into the sticky mud. He tried to get out, but every movement seemed to make the situation worse. The more he struggled, the more he slid into the mud that was pulling him in. Panic began to take hold of the little calf. He started desperately fighting to free himself, but every effort was in vain. The mud was too thick, too treacherous, and the young elephant found himself increasingly trapped. The herd, busy cooling off and drinking, didn't immediately notice the drama unfolding just a few steps away. It was only when the adults decided to resume their journey that they realized his absence. Alarmed, the elephants gathered around the struggling youngster. They began murmuring among themselves with the deep rumbling sounds they used to communicate. Some of the older members immediately tried to help, stretching out their powerful trunks to pull him out of the mud. But every attempt seemed useless. The calf was trapped too deep, and every effort seemed only to worsen his situation. The herd soon realized that saving the little one would not be easy. Elephants, known for their great intelligence and cooperative spirit, began to organize themselves better. With great coordination, they tried to lift the calf by pushing from different angles, but nothing seemed to work. The mud was relentless, and the weight of the young elephant kept him anchored to the ground. Hours passed, and the heat of the day continued to bear down on them. The elephants emitted anguished sounds, a desperate call that echoed across the reserve. This cry for help, by chance, was heard by some visitors to the reserve, who were exploring an area not far away. At first, those noises were met with curiosity and concern, but no one immediately understood what was really happening. While the visitors tried to figure out the source of that sound, the herd continued to struggle, increasingly desperate. Suddenly, an unusual noise caught the elephant's attention. It came from afar but was approaching quickly. It was the hum of an engine, the sound of a jeep advancing through the savannah. Panic spread among the elephants. They didn't know if the newcomers were friends or foes. Their reaction was immediate. They surrounded the calf, forming a protective wall with their massive bodies, ready to defend him from any threat. The jeep got closer and closer until its occupants could clearly see what was happening. The men on board, rangers from the reserve, quickly realized the seriousness of the situation. They tried to approach to assess and help, but the elephants did not move an inch. They remained still, their eyes fixed on the strangers, ready to push them back if they made a single wrong move. Time was running out, and the rangers knew they couldn't stay there forever. The adult elephants had to make a difficult decision. While the younger members of the herd, scared and confused, had begun to move away in search of a safe place, the older ones had to decide whether to continue fighting to save the calf or abandon him for the good of the group. The calf, now exhausted, no longer had the strength to fight. The mud continued to hold him prisoner, while his fate seemed increasingly uncertain. With great reluctance, the herd made the heart-wrenching decision to move on, leaving the calf behind. The elephants slowly walked away, looking back with broken hearts, but aware that they could do nothing more. The rangers, seeing the herd move away, finally approached the calf. Now the little elephant faced a new challenge: the muddy ground that held him prisoner and the unknown men who were getting closer and closer. Despite being exhausted, the calf tried to get up one last time, but his body no longer responded. He had no strength left, and the only thing he could do was watch with sad and fearful eyes as these new adversaries approached. The rangers, realizing the seriousness of the situation, began to work quickly. They were neither poachers nor tourists, but simply people dedicated to protecting the animals in the reserve. Armed only with shovels in their hands, they began to clear the mud from around the calf, trying to create a path that would allow the little one to get out. The work was hard and time was running out, but none of them was willing to give up. After what seemed like an eternity, the rangers finally managed to create a path solid enough to allow the little elephant to move. With one last desperate effort, the calf began to pull himself up, and after several hours of exhausting struggle, he finally managed to free himself. The air seemed charged with an indescribable emotion. The little one was safe. The men and the elephant, though of different species, seemed to share a moment of mutual understanding. The rangers were overjoyed at the success of the operation, but immediately a new problem arose. Where was the herd? They couldn't leave the young elephant alone, too vulnerable and scared, but finding his family wouldn't be easy. They decided to tie the calf with a light rope to prevent him from wandering off while they tried to locate the herd. But the little elephant, although tired, was not happy at all to be tied up. He struggled, desperately trying to free himself, but his strength had now abandoned him. After a few attempts, he gave up, reluctantly accepting his situation. The rangers, in the meantime, tried to calm the animal and gain his trust. They knew the calf needed water, so one of them filled a container and offered it to the little elephant. After a moment of hesitation, the calf lowered his trunk and began drinking eagerly. The fresh water not only quenched his thirst, but also allowed him to cool down after the long day spent under the scorching sun. With the calf calmer, the rangers managed to get closer and check him to make sure he had no serious injuries. Fortunately, despite the harsh experience, the little one seemed to be fine, although he was obviously very frightened and stressed. As evening approached, the calf continued to nervously look around, hoping to see his family again. And then, just as the sun was about to set, a familiar sound broke the silence of the savannah. It was the call of the herd. The elephants had returned. They had not abandoned their young one. The rangers heard the call, but at first they couldn't tell where it was coming from. In a short time, they realized they were once again close to the waterhole, the place where it all began. The calf, hearing the call of his family, became agitated, trying to free himself from the ropes that held him. The rangers, understanding the urgency of the situation, released the little elephant, who, with an enthusiastic run, headed toward his herd. The rangers moved away to observe the scene from a safe distance, allowing the calf to reunite with his family. When the calf finally reached the herd, the emotion was palpable. The elephants gathered around him, welcoming him with sounds of joy and relief. The little one, tired but happy, nestled between the legs of his companions, finally safe. The rangers, watching that moving scene, felt deeply touched by the determination and love those animals had shown. In the end, the little elephant had overcome a tough ordeal, but he was saved thanks to the timely intervention of the rangers and the tenacity of his herd. This incredible adventure concluded with a happy ending, a touching example of the deep bond that exists among elephants and the extraordinary importance of the work of those who dedicate themselves to protecting wildlife.